bracket pretty close to perfect right now with their, right?
Mine broke yesterday.
Good evening. It is Monday, March 22nd. It is 7:02 p.m. and I'm calling the Maple Plains City Council meeting to order. I'm looking for a motion to adopt this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cahill,
Second,
I'll second.
Member DeLuca. All in favor of approving the agenda as is by a show of hands, please. I see 5 hands. Opposed, same sign. All right, the agenda is approved 5-0. At this time, if you are able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As you may recall, last month, we had the privilege of swearing in our new fire chief, Chief McCoy, and then he swore in his line officers, or his assistant chiefs, excuse me. And Chief is here this evening, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to him.
So just for the council members and Madam Mayor, thank you for allowing us to have this time to swear in our line officers. And just a little bit of background on the oath of office. We're here to swear in our line officers. And of course, they're all firefighters. And firefighters is one of the world's most honored but dangerous occupations there is. When there's an emergency in the community, our firefighters and line officers are the first on the scene. Firefighters are there at devastating ravages of fire, motor vehicle crashes, tornadoes, hazmat incidents, rescue operations, explosions, medical emergencies, and many, many other critical incidents. Our firefighters are civil servants and are sworn officers following standard policies and procedures of fire service and standard operating procedures of their departments. They are there to prevent human suffering and death, and to stabilize incidents and prevent damages and loss of property. It's often said firefighters are running towards danger while everybody else is running away. And it's what makes this such a noble profession. There's a great opportunity to swear in the line officers tonight, Captain Jay McCoy, Captain Ed McGinty, Lieutenant Zach Richardson. Unfortunately, Lieutenant Jake Marin could not be here with us tonight. So officers, I'd like you to come forward and we'll give you the oath of offices. And I'd like my 2 assistant chiefs to come forward also and assist. So if you want to just line up over here by the flag. You want to just step up here. Don't be afraid of me.
He's like closer to the wall. They're gonna be able to pick it up on the camera as well.
Okay. So we need to get Zach and Ed in here. This a little bit.
More?
Come this way a little bit. Don't trip over the computer. There you go. Perfect. And the first kind of sentence, I'll individual, and then after that, we'll repeat that after me together. I, Jay McCoy, do solemnly swear.
I, Jim McCoy, do solemnly swear.
I, Ed McGinty, do solemnly swear.
I, Ed McGinty, do solemnly swear.
And I, Zach, do solemnly swear.
I, Zach, do solemnly swear.
And then in unison, we repeat after me. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America
And the state of Minnesota against all enemies,
and the state of Minnesota against all enemies,
both foreign and domestic.
both foreign and domestic.
And I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties
Faithfully and impartially discharge my duties
as a firefighter of the Maple Plains Fire Department
as a firefighter of the Maple Plains Fire Department
under the appointment of the department according to the laws of Minnesota
under this appointment laws according to the state of Minnesota,
County of Hennepin,
County of Hennepin,
and the cities we serve,
and the cities we serve,
and to the best of my skills and abilities,
to the best of my skills and abilities.
so help me God.
So help me God.
So at this time, whoever you've chosen to pin your new badge, have them come forward and do the pinning ceremony.
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, at this time,
Kylie, come this way, you don't have to go over it.
go ahead. Yeah, we'll take pictures. Hey, Beckett, come on up, Papa.
Doing a group or? I'll go individually and then we'll do a group for all you guys.
Smile.
If you want the mask off quick, you can take it off too, so you can do it. Smile.
I'm gonna take
Push it down.
Smile.
Good.
Awesome. Good job, guys. Ready, Carly? Smiles in there. There you go. Got it. Sweet. Jay, coming for you guys next.
We all need to move.
And then we'll do one
We're gonna
group
take
photo
a
here.
10-minute recess while we do pictures. We'll be back at 7:20. All right, it is good to see everyone getting back. All right. Okay, I have 7:20 and it looks like everyone is here, so we're gonna begin. Next item of business is visitors to be heard. We do have one visitor to be heard tonight, so I will invite her to the podium. If you would please state your name and address, and he'll have up to 3 minutes to share with us tonight.
I'm Catherine Rose.
Julie, we can't hear her when you muted.
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry, Catherine.
oh, no problem. So I'm Kathy Rose from, I have a farm out in Montrose and I grow plants. I've been working within the nursery industry since 1980 and grew up on a dairy farm. Anyhow, I'm here tonight. I have As Nature's Nest, which is my business, and it's a transient merchant application that I'm applying for over at the old schoolhouse and the property of Dan and Kara Beck. And I'm really hoping that I can have my stand there. It does take a lot of planning to do. I would have put it in my application much earlier, but Dan and Kara believed that they would be able to get their site plan to the city. And so because of that, I'm delayed as well, hoping that that would get approved. So I know that there was a lot of people that I helped, and I really like helping people with plants. I mean, it's really what I love to do. And there was a lot of people that don't get service at other places. So anyhow, that's all I got to say. So thanks.
Thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is our consent agenda, which tonight includes city council meeting minutes from February 8th, February 22nd workshop, and 22nd regular city council business meeting. It also includes the Wetland Conservation Act activity reporting, Public Works emergency radio purchase, approval of the EDA expenditures to Northland and the West Hennepin Chamber of Commerce, and the S2 support contract. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Oh, Councilmember Fay, I see your hand up.
Mayor, is it possible to pull letter C for a couple of questions and pull that off the consent agenda for a couple of questions?
Of course.
Then I would make a motion to approve A, B, D, and E under the consent agenda.
All right, there's a motion on the table by Councilmember Fay to approve A, B, D, and E on the consent agenda. Looking for a second.
I'll
Also,
second that.
DeLon, all in favor of approving letters A, B, D, and E by a show of hands? I see 5 hands, opposed by a hand. All right. Motion carries. So let's go back to letter C, Public Works Emergency. Councilmember Fay.
Thank you, Mayor. Clarissa, I'm hoping you might be able to answer this. In your recommended action, in your narrative, you have a motion to approve it, motion to approve the 0% lease, and then the purchase of the auxiliary equipment. Do we need to include into that the $49.10 per month for the fleet support?
That's a good question. So I was thinking that the fleet support was included in that subscriber agreement. But I'd have to.
Because the total lease amount, if I remember correctly, was about $105 or $107 a month, according to Gary's documentation, and that included the 2 radios at $58 plus another $49 per month for the fleet support.
So fleet support is mentioned in the subscriber agreement and then referenced in Appendix A. So I think that you're covered. Yeah, they're listed in the appendix, so you can
So
certainly
Appendix
enumerate
A
the
is
actual
the
amount.
tier one fleet support. That's part of the contract. And then the action is the leasing of the radios for a 7-year period. Okay, that's all. I just wanted to clarify it because the document from Hennepin County was not included in the discussion that we had with Gary 2 weeks ago.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
and that was something that was brought up when I kind of got in contact and said, we're gonna move forward with this. He kind of clarified that they were updating all of their subscriber agreements across the entire county.
Okay. Then if no one else had any other questions on that, I would make a motion to approve letter D, or excuse me, letter C.
All right, motion by Councilmember Fay to approve letter C, second by Councilmember DeLon. All in favor of approving letter C, Public Works Emergency Radio Purchase. By show of hands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item of business this evening is our accounts payable. Are there questions for staff regarding accounts payable? Oh, go ahead, Clarissa.
I just wanted to just vocalize what I had put in the in my summary, and just to clarify, I had a great meeting with the finance committee, council members DeLuca and Fay, and talking about some of these processes and some of the kind of the snags we run into, trying to keep in line with state statute, and then also meet the deadlines set by vendors, and only having one council meeting. And so I didn't have great examples when I met with them about, why we do some of this, delegations and stuff, but they were strongly in favor of keeping everything coming to council or or approved by council. And so in talking to Sharon and figuring out kind of where we were falling short, we came up with this list of things that we haven't been invoiced yet. But if we wait until the next council meeting, we're going to be late. And so she is now actually still in the process. She's been calling vendors and trying to get due dates kind of rearranged and such. But again, just trying to follow all the rules is kind of where I came up with that third motion of the kind of pre-approval for these payables that we know we will be getting. Question, Councilmember Fay?
Yeah, then I had thank you for that in your narrative, by the way. It's helpful. I did have a couple of questions on accounts payable for both general as well as the fire department, if you can answer them quickly. And that would be I know we talked about trying to put a system together that would be monitoring the fire department's fuel usage. I see we're still splitting it 50-50. Is that something that we can see possibly happening on the next accounts payable where we appropriate the correct amount of fuel for public works? And very well, thank
We
you.
can certainly try that. There is a kind of a checkout sheet at the pumps. So it's to some degree an honor system because we don't really know how much is in the pump to begin with. So we're kind of making the assumption that anybody that takes fuel out of there is recording it appropriately. So I don't love that system. I'd like to look at getting something that's a little more, I don't know, failure proof or whatever. I've looked at the, like the gauges that you can put on fuel tanks, but those systems do get very expensive. But I think even to your point, I mean, really, it's 50-50 now. We should be able to get it at least closer to accurate by just using that spreadsheet. So yeah, certainly.
Well, it's 50-50 now. It's been 50-50 for years.
Yeah. And I
Okay. And then Chief McCoy referenced, and we talked about it in the fire commission meeting, a new purchasing procedure for the fire department and the debit card or the credit card at the city. And there are about 15% of the fire department accounts payable this month are reimbursements back to firefighters for sundries and equipment that they bought. Will this new system that is in place, will that eliminate the need for firefighters to be using their personal credit card for hard purchases?
I think it's actually the opposite. I think the PO system that Ray was implementing is actually to create a system that verifies that when someone is using their personal credit card to purchase items, that they have already been pre-approved by Ray for that purchase. Moving, just the way that they're set up and trying to move all of those purchases into our office, I think it would be very difficult because a lot of what they buy is food or whatever. So I'm not sure how. I think we'd be adding a lot of inefficiencies to that. And I personally am comfortable reimbursing staff for purchases made with their personal credit cards so long as I have proper documentation, and they won't get reimbursed unless I have, with Ray's new system, they're getting pre-approval for the purchases. They're filling out the form that says, I attest I have never, I have not been paid for these items, and it's true and accurate. They're giving a copy of the receipt. Ray's signing off on it. I'm signing off on it. So there are enough kind of checks and balances. And I think Bonnie would probably agree from an, kind of, oh shoot, Bonnie, what's the term for this?
Like an internal control.
Internal controls, thank you. That system that we have put in place is both capable and also normal. This is a very normal way to have this set up.
Okay, and then the follow-up to that question is, are we going to eliminate the shipping of product to firefighters' homes?
Again, I would argue, that's up to you guys if you want to try and do that. They can ship stuff here. I think the place where it gets a little tricky is if people are working during the day and can't get here to go to their fire meetings in the evenings. So I'd have to talk to Ray and just kind of clarify the logistics. And again, are the internal controls that we've established sufficient? Does it matter where it's getting shipped other than it, perception from the public? So if that's our main concern, do we want to have it shipped here instead?
Okay.
Bonnie, any feedback or anybody?
I was just gonna say that I could take a look at, we do a few other fire districts. I could take a look, we could ask what they do for shipping. I'm not sure on that part.
Yeah, because I frankly have ordered things on Amazon with my credit card. I have them shipped here both for convenience sake and because it looks better it's very obvious what the purchase is for. So I certainly am sympathetic to that claim. It's really just kind of a logistics thing because they're the fire department and a lot of them have regular jobs outside the city and we're only open from 9 until 4.
I think there's enough of them that someone could pick it up. Yeah, or were there enough evenings too? I think just to keep it clean, let's ship things to the city.
Okay. Can do.
On this thread, so I was alarmed by the number of firefighter reimbursements as well, and more so in the amount of them. Most organizations I worked for, you can only do a personal reimbursement up to a certain amount before it has to go on the city for different, protection purposes and just accounting. So, if you guys feel like the internal control is in place, then I'll trust you on that. But I was wondering whether we wanted to have a policy as to what can be automatically reimbursed to an employee, and anything above that should be done via city PO or city credit card.
And I think that PO, so again, Ray's implementing this PO process. So he is actually getting they're getting now pre-approval for all purchases that
But
they're.
that's not the same as the city paying for it through the PO. So my concern is them using a
Oh, you're
personal
saying-
credit card. Yeah,
Okay.
even if it's getting approved, like I'm not double guessing the firefighters getting approval. I love that system's going to be in place. It's more just this amount in terms of like purchase protections, insurance and things like that often go back to who actually paid for it.
Right.
And also in the audit, we were noted for missing so many receipts. So there's just some red flags. And again, it's not just firefighters, it's across the city.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, we're definitely fixing those processes. Yeah, that's a great point with the purchase protection. So you're saying, they after a certain amount, if I'm gonna write a policy on this, is there an amount that people would be comfortable with where it has to go through the city as a payable versus a reimbursement? Or
I brought this up to Ray, I think at the fire commission meeting, and he said, when we're buying water, to hydrate the firefighters in the fire, or buying food for a training event or something like that. Clearly, that's something that is a spot purchase the day of, and it's just bought. But when they're buying hard items like helmets and hats and not hats, helmets and turnout gear, small equipment and things of that nature, which was tens of thousands of dollars last year, I think that should go through this. I think the purchase order procedure that Ray is putting together is great. I agree with Caitlin, but it should be forwarded then to Sharon, who places the order based on the purchase order. And then, like you said, if there's returns or insurance or things of that nature, it's through the city credit card versus a personal credit card. A dollar amount, I don't know.
Larissa, could you share your screen so people could see the memo that references the numbers, please, while we're talking?
are you talking about the memo?
Seven.
Okay. Are you talking about the payables, I suppose? Can you see my screen? Okay, so,
I was talking page 37, the actual memo that had the
Oh,
record for the motion.
okay,
Well, and Clarissa, this is Mike. I too share that view that major things like a dual monitor wall mounted $700 item should never have been done through a reimbursement. That should always go through the city. And if you're looking for a small amount, I agree, go get a little water for the training, less than 20, 30 bucks, who cares? Yeah, do that as a reimbursement. But anything that is a thing beyond that should really go through the city going forward. On the payables, I did have 2 questions, if you can answer. One, and this goes to something we talked about in the finance committee meeting, that we're going to start trying to get payables to the proper account at the proper time. Yet I look at the legal bill for Hoff-Berry, and there's a Meadows of Maple Plain being charged to the legal funds. Wouldn't that have more appropriately been charged to the escrow account for Meadows? This is that shoring up that we end up having to do at the end of the year. And then the second one is, I cannot for the life of me figure out where we would have spent 270 bucks worth of unleaded fuel.
to your Meadows question, I'm not certain that there's a separate escrow account set up for Meadows, so I'll have to look at that. We've been essentially kind of taking those two and kind of putting together a list, but I'll verify with Sharon that there is or is not.
Well, there must have been, because we ended up short adjusting it, but please look at that
Okay.
if you would.
And I'm not sure about the fuel. I would have to look into that further.
Thank you.
Other questions regarding accounts payable?
I just had one. On page 39 of the packet, Clarissa, there's a thermostat for fire station upstairs. Should that be coded to the fire department?
Well, that is again, kind of this ongoing question, and I've gotten a little bit more documentation as to how, this whole question of who maintains the building and where that starts and stops. So Ray had just sent me some information about a meeting. It's just today, so I haven't really looked into it yet, but a meeting or an agreement or potential agreement for the Independence covers the police station and Maple Plain covers the fire station. So, and so if we can establish that, which is kind of the claim out there by others, then we need to, again, kind of address this. Where does that start and where does that stop? So these little, maintenance type things, where do those go? So I will continue to look into that, but for now we are specifically referring to, what was it again? A thermostat?
Yeah, page 39.
Okay.
Or sorry, let me make sure that was what it was. 39, go for Ace Hardware thermostat for fire station. And I don't know, I was just curious because it's a fire station thing. So I don't know if that comes out of our budget, out of their budget.
I'm trying to clarify that, trying desperately.
Other questions for staff? So Clarissa, you want 3 different motions made tonight then?
Yes, please.
All right. So the first, we're looking for a motion to approve the general fund check batch.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill,
Second.
second by DeLon. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of approving the general fund check batch by a show of hands? 3, 4, 5. Opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries 5-0. The next motion is to approve the fire department check batch. For a motion,
I'll make that motion.
Councilmember Fay. For a second,
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cahill. Any further discussion or questions regarding the fire department check badge? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the fire department check badge? 5 hands, opposed, same sign, motion carries 5-0. The third motion regarding accounts payable this evening is to approve unreceived regular March payables as listed in the amount of $3,837.96, subject to the receipt of invoices and review and approved by the city administrator. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by DeLong. For a second.
Second.
Second by Cahill. Any further discussion or questions, Councilmember DeLuca?
You're muted.
You're muted.
There we go. My apologies. Clarissa, I know we had this discussion at the Finance Committee meeting, and I thought we were at the point where we had determined anything that we do would still be within the 35 days. So I'm actually surprised to see this back on the agenda. And I believe that even if one of these receipts came in tomorrow, we'd still be within 35 days when we would have our April meeting. I do not see a need to pre-approve these in the event that they are not what those figures are, which they could alter or they could change. And I don't like the idea of pre-approving something that hasn't really existed yet. I do not see the same need that you do for doing this. Any receipt would still be within the 35 days.
And I think what we missed in that conversation was the fact that these vendors don't give us a full 30 days. And so I mean, maybe there's a law out there that says you have to give cities 30 days to pay. But we know based on past invoices that we'll get the invoice March 1st and it'll be due on March 15th, for example. So we really have this really short window. And again, I mean, as I mentioned in my report, yes, we could call them and have them take off, you know, the late fees or whatever. But this seemed the more efficient route for now, while we kind of transition from other processes.
Councilmember Fay.
And I was part of that discussion as well. And I agree with Mike. And I have a question. I've been doing this for 4.5 years. Why has this never been a problem in the past?
Because I'm a rule follower.
So we've always paid our bills. Have we been getting?
You've
late
always paid
payments
your
on
bills. You have
Mediacom
not
and
always
Frontier and
approved. You have
What's
not
that?
always approved all of the bills that were paid. We're steps ahead. It feels icky, I know, because you have it, you know, the way that you want to see it, but we're a step ahead of where you were a few months ago. I promise. As far as being in line with state statute.
Okay.
Bonnie might not care from an audit perspective. I don't know.
Any further discussion?
Is this just this one time, or is this going to be a recurring?
As I mentioned, Sharon is working with our vendors to change those due dates. So we're trying to adjust the practice to what your ideal policy is and keep everybody in line.
Okay.
I would just note that these are pretty standard frequent payments that we're making. So I'm comfortable approving them because I don't think they're going to change. You know, our internet charge and things like that don't typically change. So.
Yeah, and state statute actually, I believe, allows for contract payments. So you've already essentially agreed to a certain contract. So your lease lays out how much you're paying. So you have essentially already pre-approved those kind of things, and those are laid out in statute. I think there's just one of those though, so.
Councilmember DeLuca.
Well, and as far as this month with this set of payables, I'm fine doing that. But perhaps Clarissa and the Finance Committee could work on a more longer term solution to this that would still get our bills paid, still have our processes be by the book, and not cause us to have to debate this every month. Is that fair?
Well, it
think
is, but I think as I mentioned in our finance committee meeting, the way that cities usually get around this is by delegating this task. So the way that we're trying to, I mean, I'm trying to work within what you and Councilmember Fay have set up as your ideal, which is bringing them to council. So in order to make that happen, I need the vendors to rearrange their schedule with us. Otherwise, I mean, it's unless Bonnie can clarify the rules or whatever, and maybe it doesn't matter from a state, from an audit perspective, but.
No, I think it does. One thing that I do hear from cities is that they ask vendors to send electronic invoices because the mailing them is usually becomes the issue.
Yeah.
So, which you're probably aware of, but yes, it does matter. So.
Yeah, I don't see any issue if these are gonna come across like this on fixed monthly expenses. I don't see the need for me even to have to approve it. We know what they are monthly.
Any further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second.
I have all three motions covered, Mayor.
We already did the first and second one.
Yeah, didn't we do the third?
We have the first and second. We were in the discussion. We need to.
Oh,
vote.
I'm sorry. Ignore me.
So we've had the discussion. We need to vote on the third motion to approve the unreceived regular March payables as listed. I'm hearing, and I just want to confirm that this is a one-time vote for March. All right, all in favor of approving the unreceived regular March payables with a show of hands? Okay, I see 5 hands opposed. All right, the motion carries 5-0. All right, next item of business is our administrative report. Our staff has so graciously submitted and written in great detail, lots of information in those. Are there any questions regarding any of our administrative reports that we want Clarissa to bring back to staff or? See none. Councilmember Fay?
Clarissa, it has to do with people service. And I'm hoping their preventive maintenance report, which would be page 64 of the packet. I'm hoping that in months to come, there's a little bit more depth to that as far as things like water treatment plant generator inspections and lift stations and wells and things of that nature. It's Mack trucks, Caterpillars, and Mack trucks and Caterpillars.
I will forward that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember DeLuca?
Clarissa, if you could just clarify with Gary on our public service police report, I'm seeing a significant drop in activity for both Independence and Maple Plain, particularly if you look at the city of Maple Plains for February, we're down almost 50% in contacts. So I just.
Sorry, Councilmember DeLuca. He did mention when we were doing police interviews that we would see the numbers drop because there was so few traffic and people out and about for the 2 weeks that we were sub-zero temperatures. So even though the officers were still out, the general public was not still out.
Okay, it's not just in. All right, thank you.
No, I mean, if you have further questions,
No,
please, I just wanted to let you know.
No,
Any other questions regarding administrative reports? Looks like everyone's been busy. All right, with that, I'm looking for a motion to receive the administrative reports.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember DeLong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Fay. All in favor of receiving the administrative reports as submitted, by show of hands? Received by hands, opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. The account reports are received. Next this evening is our new business, and our first item is the 2020 audit. Thank you, Bonnie, for your patience and for being with us this evening.
My pleasure. And is it all right if I share my screen and I'll pull up the presentation?
Be great.
You're okay to do so.
All right, perfect. Okay. So, so my name is Bonnie Springer, and I'm sure I think you've all gotten to hear me speak about the audit or the budget previously this summer. So thank you for your time. And I'm going to go through the results of the 2020 financial statement audit. We'll touch first on our audit opinion, some of the internal control areas that we have included in the report this year, and then go over some legal compliance areas as well. And after we go through a few of those items, we will touch on the financial information, including the budget, the enterprise utility funds, and then also some ratio and performance metrics that we have in the report as well. So first, a little bit about our audit opinion. So you guys engage us as an outside entity to perform an audit of the financial statements each year. And our goal is to provide you at the end of that audit with an opinion on your financial statements. And we did provide a clean or an unmodified opinion. Essentially what that means is through all of the audit evidence that we were able to gather and the information that we looked at in performing various tests, we were able to provide a reasonable assurance that your financial statements were free of a material misstatements. So you can look at your financial statements at the end of the year and have that assurance that the numbers are reasonably accurate and there's no large differences within your accounting system. Through that audit and that review, we also gain an understanding of internal controls. And so one of the areas that, although you have a clean audit report, and that is great, that's a really good thing, there are a number of different internal control areas that do lead to additional risk that I want to talk about with you this year. Some are new and maybe have existed, but this might be the first year that we're talking about them. And then there's also one legal compliance area that I want to talk about as well. So looking at the city's internal controls, there's a number of different elements to your control structure. So I'm going to break down these findings and these different things that we have in the report. I'm going to talk about the two on the top first. So those are the preparation of financial statements and limited segregation of duties. Those are internal control findings that you have had in your financial statement in your audit report for a long time. That's nothing new, and it's nothing to be overly concerned about at all. These are really just disclosures to the city, letting you know that there are some increased risk because of the limited size of your organization. The first one, preparation of financial statements. You hire us to perform your audit, but we also prepare financial statements. In the most ideal world, someone within your organization would prepare those financial statements, but that's very uncommon for a city of your size to have an internal financial statement preparation. So we do that as an additional service, and there is increased risk in that. The financial statements are a very important part of your internal control environment and need to be reviewed, need to be understood, and approved by City Council. So that's the first finding there. Again, common, was in there last year, something to be aware of. The second one, limited segregation of duties. This is another internal control area, which essentially is talking about that there's a limited number of staff to properly separate out all of the different control responsibilities. Sharon and Clarissa, they do a lot of things within the city, and they touch a lot of different areas, and there's not quite enough staff to separate out everything. And so that's where you guys come in. It's very important that you are involved in the internal control structure, and it's very important that you understand that because of the limited number of staff, there's an increased risk for things to go wrong. And so that's that second finding there. The third and the fourth internal control finding on here, these are new this year. So for the first one, unreconciled escrow accounts. During our audit and through conversations with city staff, we became aware that there was some increased risk in the escrow accounts not being reconciled on a regular basis. What's being recorded in your general ledger, so kind of a similar question that you talked about earlier, what's being recorded in your general ledger as far as how escrow payments and receipts are being applied, needs to match up with how the city is tracking them and knowing what is owed to or by different individuals or developers. And if the tracking of those escrows does not match how it's being recorded in your general ledger, that is an internal control area that could lead to a material misstatement in your financial statements. So it's really important that those escrow accounts are being reconciled and understood on a regular basis. The fourth item on there, internal control of your financial system. So what happened during the year, and this is all about your budget. So what happened during the year for 2020 is the budget that was entered into the accounting software did not necessarily match what was ultimately approved by council. And so because of that, because the budget that was approved said one thing and then the accounting software said something else, there's a risk there that that you're not going to get the type of financial information during the year that you need to. I think you guys are aware of that, and you know, I think you have a good process in place for your budget now and looking at that. So this is not something that is totally out there and still an issue. It's something that I believe has been taken care of, but it did exist during 2020. There was that increased internal control risk out there, and just something to be aware of now as you move forward and being more aware of how that budget impacts the accounting software. So those are the internal control risks that we see within the organization. The fifth item that I have on here is a material audit adjustment. So during our audit, we became aware that there was some grant information that had not been fully requested for reimbursement yet. And because such, it was not reflected in the city's accounting structure. And so that was for a material amount, and we felt that it was important to include that finding in the report this year, that did need to be recorded, and an action did need to be taken by the city to make sure that that information was requested. There's a couple other findings that I want to go over with you. Both of them are compliance related. So the sixth item that we have in the report is related to the coronavirus relief funds. Now, this was a very complicated program, and it's going to continue to be complicated as there are more federal funds that come into the city. And we want to make sure that it's really understood the impact that these can have, and the importance of understanding those program requirements. So what happened in 2020, there was some coronavirus relief funds that were received. There was one instance where a very small amount, and I'm not talking about large amounts here, it was a very small amount of funds that were redirected towards replacing some revenue that the city considered foregone and did not collect from businesses, and refunded to businesses, and then use these funds to kind of reimburse themselves. That was a very confusing area under the guidance, and our interpretation of the guidance and the state of Minnesota's interpretation of the federal guidance is that that was not allowed and could not occur. And so we see that those funds as being in non-compliance under the grant requirements. And then there was another instance in which there were some funds paid out after the grant period. So the grant period ended on November 15th. There were some funds paid out after that date and then applied to the grant funds. Not for a huge amount, but something that we do see as a non-compliance issue. And our main goal in pointing this out to the city is so that there might be opportunity to discuss with the state and and see if a different funds can be applied to that grant. The thing that we don't want to happen is for the state to come after their own review and look at these things and say, oh, you got to give us our money back because we don't think these are in compliance. So right now there is opportunity to have that discussion with the state and see if other funds can be substituted and reported on an adjusted reporting form. And then the last item on here is for
Bonnie,
credit
before
card
you move on,
support.
can I ask a question real quick
Yes, of
about
course.
that? So with the liquor license fee, so I was a little bit confused about that one. Because I understand that the cities could not replace revenue. We didn't lose revenue on liquor licenses. We made a grant to the businesses to have their liquor licenses. So how is that us replacing revenue when we've granted it to the businesses?
Okay, so that's a really good question because there is a difference between, so liquor license revenue is revenue that you do receive on an annual basis. And then you also did, in addition to that, you did small business assistance grants in which there was an application process. So it's our understanding that the liquor licenses weren't necessarily done through like the small business assistance grant program. That was just done as a half of the liquor licenses were reimbursed and not through that small business assistance grant program.
So even though okay, I guess I don't see it that way, but I trust you
Okay.
guys. To me,
All
it was
right.
never revenue that we had, and so it wasn't lost revenue, I guess, is my understanding. But so I guess we can look into the new program to see if we can cover that.
Yes, and they are changing some of those requirements under the new program. So I understand the new program is that it's going to be much more relaxed. And also, if when you talk to the state and this is our interpretation, and I believe the state's interpretation as well, but if there's a way that you can report it differently on your reporting form, that they would then consider it to be in that small business assistance program, then that's amazing. I mean, that would be best case right there. So if there's still room for that to happen, then yes, I think that's a really good question.
Thank you.
And so then for the credit card support, that is a legal compliance area. Credit cards need to have the supporting documentation kept on file. And then there was a number of transactions or months, sorry, that did not have the supporting documentation. So really important to have that conversation around how that process should work, and then also make sure that any new things that you're implementing are meeting those statutes. So. All right, that was a lot to go over. Any questions on these items before I move forward to the financial information? Okay. All right, so on to the general fund. So the general fund, as you all know, is that main operating fund of the city. That's where the majority of the activity takes place for the day-to-day operations. And it's helpful to see what's your fund balance compared to your budget, so you know how much you have in your reserves to cover your next year's operating costs. And so at the end of 2020, there was a decrease in your general fund budget down to about 60% of your next year's operating budget. And that is right in line with your policy. So although you did experience a decrease this year, it is still at that minimum fund balance policy that the city has in place. A couple of the reasons for that decrease you can see here in this budget to actual statement. So for 2020, your revenues were over budget by about 100,000. Some of that was building permits, some of that was the CARES program that came in, and then expenditures were over budget by about 380,000. So this budget variance here is really the main cause of your fund balance decrease. So a few things that that jump out as far as this budget variance. There was a budget variance in your administration department, and that could have been for a variety of reasons. We can go into more detail and look at more detail of that as you'd like. But then the other department that was over budget was in that Public Works department. And some of that could be related to, unbudgeted CARES costs that were applied to the grant. It could have been for other reasons as well. Overall, your general fund balance decreased about 130,000 from where you were last year. All right, so we're going to take a look at a few different graphs that break out your revenues and expenditures and some of the different information within your general fund. So here's your major revenue sources. You can see the majority of it is from taxes, and then intergovernmental includes things like LGA, local government aid, and then also the increase this year is from that CARES program. This other category, the increase you see there from 2019 to 2020 is mostly due to that 100,000 sale, that compost site sale that occurred. So that was recorded in your general fund. It's in this other category. And then here are your disbursements for the general fund, so you can see what your largest program costs are. So public safety did jump up there, and then you can see your general government and public works as well, and the trend for those over the past 3 years. And then here are your capital projects. So separate from your general fund, you do have some reserves built up for different capital projects that you have coming up down the road. Your main capital project fund has a balance of about 1.3 million. There was a sharp decrease this year, mainly because of that Veterans Memorial Park project. And this is where that there is a grant that will be received for that project to cover a portion of these costs. So that is not reflected in this ending fund balance there, since that has not been received. So that will be recorded and received in 2021. You have a downtown development fund, which has had a negative balance for the last several years. And at some point, it will be really important to have a conversation around how that negative balance is going to be covered and where those funds are going to come from. The street improvement fund does not have a lot of activity that flows through there, very small balance. And then there is an equipment capital fund as well that is growing a balance for equipment replacement. And I'll just note too that the equipment capital fund and the capital project fund, those are funded by a transfer from the general fund, an annual transfer to build up those balances. All right, and then just a couple of other types of funds here. So the fire partnership is included in your financial statements as a blended component unit, and that balance did go down from 2019 due to the fire truck purchase this year using up some of those capital reserves. And then there's a very relatively unchanged balance in your economic development fund that doesn't see too much activity during the year. Here's an overview of your governmental debt service. So this table and this chart does not include the water or sewer debt service that's due, just focusing on the street and anything that would have been issued for a governmental type project. And so you can see here that you have 5 debt issuances out there right now, ranging from the next one drops off in maturity in 2023. And then after that, they're a little bit further out, with the last bond maturing in 2039 for what you currently have issued. And on this bottom chart gives you any idea of what those principal and interest payments look like over the next 10 years. So you can see what those requirements are going to be over the next decade. Okay, and then here's a focus on your water fund. So your utilities run a little bit differently than those other funds do. And so it's helpful to think about your water fund on a cash flow basis. So how much cash do you have coming in from your operating receipts to cover your cost and your debt payments? So that's what this first chart is telling you. The blue bar are your operating receipts, and you can see there how those are covering those debt payments and those operating costs. And then the bottom chart is your cash over the last 4 years. So within the city's cash balances in the water fund, there's really two main areas. The blue part of this chart is unrestricted cash just sitting in your operating. The green part of this is some capital in a separate capital water fund that has been specifically designated in your accounting software for capital, and that's this green piece. The difference between the blue and the green is really just an internal designation. There's nothing that I'm aware of, at least, that says the green is only for capital. It has to be, we can't transfer any of it to operating. And so it's just one thing to keep in mind, that this green has really been an internal designation of what you're building up for those capital purchases. Important to have, definitely, but also important to analyze and see, is that really the balance for capital that we need? I'll point out at the end of 2020, there was some bond payments that were paid in 2020 but not due until 2021. And so we are reporting a very small purple portion as cash with fiscal agent. And so your bond agent is holding on to some cash at the end of the year that will be applied to February 1st, or was applied to a February 1st bond payment. So that's where that purple is coming in this year, and that hadn't been there in the past. And then here's the sewer fund. So similar charts showing you what your sewer fund looks like for operating cash flows, and then also your cash balances. So some fairly large decreases in cash from 2019 to 2020. And then you can see here that the operating costs in 2019, I just want to point out one of the main reasons that increased so much from 2018, because that looks kind of an alarming jump there. There were quite a few Met Council payments that were not made in 2018 that were then made in 2019. So your cash outflow in 2019 was a lot larger than it would have otherwise been, because it covered some of the 2018 operating costs that were paid out. And then here is your stormwater fund. So you can see here those cash balances. So stormwater does have a really good cash balance in it. You're building up reserves there. But generally, those repairs can be costly and happen just every so often for your infrastructure in the stormwater fund. So that is a very intentional buildup of those reserves. All right, I have just a few more charts that I want to go over with you. So this looks at just your total cash for all of your funds. So you can see here what that has looked like over the past 3 years. And then here's some information on your tax rate and your taxes per capita. So we put together some information from class 4 cities, which is a population of 2,500 to 10,000, so a very wide range there. And then also cities in Hennepin County. So you can compare your tax rate and your taxes per capita to those other cities. And I can always get you, if you have specific cities that you want to look at, we have all of the detail for every city in the state of Minnesota. So I can give you more specifics if that's something that you're interested in, because keep in mind, every city, although you're in the same county and you're in the same population size, every city is different, right? So just take these a little bit of a grain of salt when you're looking at them. The city of Maple Plain is in blue. You've got the population size, peer group in green, and then Hennepin County is in gray. And you can see here that your tax rate did decrease from 2019. It's been decreasing annually since 2017. And then here's a look at your debt per capita. So you can see there what those trends have looked like on a debt per capita on the first chart. And then your debt service expenditures, you can see how much of your total operating budget are you spending on debt. So that can be helpful to gauge that in addition to the debt per capita.
Bonnie,
And
can we
here-
touch on that slide
Yes, of
really
course.
quickly, because that's where my question lies.
Mhm.
Looking at the top one, it looks, I'm not a fan of debt, but I understand it has its place.
Mhm.
And we seem to have a lot of funds out there that have unassigned cash. And what I'm wondering is looking at these graphs and these numbers and what you know about, other comparing cities, are we okay to keep bonding for projects, or should we start looking at, funding more for projects? I saw that it's a 3% is the number that we can bond up to, and we're not there yet. But I mean,
Mhm.
what is your take on this?
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely good if you can fund a project internally, that is obviously going to save you money in the long run because it's not obviously issuing debt cost money besides just the project cost. And so taking a look at what is your tax rate and your ability to, what do you want that to kind of max out at, is helpful in looking at that and then also seeing what you need. So I don't have a good answer for you right now. It just really depends on what your needs are. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely room there. The nice thing that what you guys have going for you right now is that you have that capital project fund that you've been building up reserves in. So, but that capital project fund balance is, what about like 1.3 million or something like that? I mean, that's not going to pay for one street project.
Right.
So, but using that as to offset any debt costs, now that's a good option that you have.
Ani, I have a question.
Mhm.
As long as we're on this page, because I highlighted it, and that is in the debt per capita. It's an alarming looking graph to look at Maple Plains debt per capita compared to class 4 cities. But you mentioned, I didn't know what a class 4 city was until you mentioned it. It's 25 to 10,000, which is, if we picked a handful of cities that were, 1,200 to 2,500, I'm assuming the debt per capita I'm guessing that graph probably wouldn't change because it's per capita, or would it be simply because of the size of the city and the infrastructure that small cities have compared to much larger cities?
Yes. Yep. I think it would change. It's a really good point. And the main reason why we like to focus on the classes is because it's comparable to information that you might receive from the Office of the State Auditor. And they use the class system to look at different statistics. And so, but yes, I think it would be interesting to look at some more comparable cities. And if that's something that you guys are interested, I can send the whole data file to Clarissa, just adding fun work for you, but I can send you the data file that includes all of the cities and their debt per capita numbers. And you guys could take a closer look at that because it is alarming, but yes, I think it would change if you were to break it down more.
And I would add to that, honestly, I wouldn't say offhand that these class 4 cities with the lower debt per capita are doing the right thing. I mean, you guys have invested so much in your infrastructure in this kind of preemptive stay on top of it mode, where a lot of these class 4 cities are in the kick the can mode. So I wouldn't necessarily categorize your debt per capita as bad per se in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, it just looks so scary with the blue being so much higher, but then I think that the chart, the graph on the bottom actually, I think paints a better picture and it doesn't look as scary.
John, we're having a hard time hearing you, Councilmember Long.
Sorry, I got my headset up. I said that the top graph is definitely scary looking, but I think the bottom one probably paints a better picture, a more accurate picture.
Sure, looking at the total budget and seeing and how that compares. All right, and then you can also see here your current expenditures. You can see your spending, and then this is just your governmental funds again. So you can see what your current spending is there per capita, and then your capital expenditures per capita as well. And then just for your water and sewer, here's a look at how much your debt service is compared to your cash flow. So how much do you have coming in for receipts to cover that debt service, those debt service payments? And I must have some calculation errors here. Oh, because it's net, the reason why this is a negative 108% is because there were all of those Met Council payments that went out in 1 year. And so that threw your debt service coverage ratio way off because you had a negative operating cash flow in 2019. So. All right, and then here's our contact information. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to me and we can talk about any of this information, of course. So here's the lovely pictures of all of your members of your audit team and contact information as well. And I would love to take any questions that you have.
Questions for Bonnie? Everyone got them answered during the presentation? Oh, Councilmember Fay.
Instead of tying up time, could I craft these in the form of a email, copy Clarissa on it and just send it to you?
Yeah, that would be great.
I don't want to, I came up with several. I don't want to tie up anyone's time.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for allowing me to come into your meeting and go over this information with you. And yep, if there are any other questions, anything, please shoot them over.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank your team for your work on this.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Have a good night. All right, our next item of business tonight is a transient merchant permit application for Nature's Nest, and I'm going to turn that over to staff.
Great. Thanks, Honorable Mayor, Council. This item is coming before you as a request for consideration of a transient merchant permit for the property located at 5300 Highway 12 to allow outdoor seasonal sales. This is a transient merchant application that's coming before the City Council, and as Council likely recalls, a little over a year ago, we updated and just overhauled our transient merchant peddler solicitation ordinance, and in doing that, we required transient merchant permits to come before the City Council for consideration prior to them being granted, or to allow them to be granted or considered. And so we did that for a number of reasons, but mostly we wanted to be able to just ensure that if a transient merchant permit was considered by the city, that certain aspects of the permit were being fully vetted by the council. Also gives the council an opportunity to just understand what and who are doing business in the city. And so we set up this process. It goes in front of the City Council. Council gets to consider whether or not to grant approval of the application. There's a couple provisions in this particular one that I'm going to go through. This particular applicant has worked in the city in 2020. They had a similar seasonal outdoor sales operation at this property, both in the spring, and then they were re-granted a second permit to operate for a lengthier time again in the fall of 2020. They are asking for a similar seasonal outdoor spring permit license or application, which would allow them to have a greenhouse and sell plants that are kind of seasonal plants on this property. They're asking for May 1st to July 1st. And they listed the hours within the application, generally Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, Saturday, 10 to 5. I'm sorry, 9 to 7, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, Saturday, 10 to 5, Sunday. And so those are very similar hours to what they had asked for last year. The couple of things that I noted in the report: one, the city's permit process and our ordinance states that a general application or a general permit can be granted for a period of 10 consecutive days during a given year. But it does allow for council's ability to extend that period of time or grant a longer time. If that is requested by the applicant, then it can be considered by the council. But I wanted to note that the standard transient merchant permit is a 10-day permit. The area that the applicant's asking to locate the outdoor sales is at the 5300 building. I've talked to council before, and I think we've noted it in the last go around that we talked about this application, that the 5300 building has been vacant for a while. Prior to its vacancy, the previous owner had brought in and allowed storage of asphalt millings on the property. As a result of that, and just age of the property, the parking lot that services this property does not meet our city's current standards, and the applicant, or not the applicant, but the owner's been notified that any use of that building is going to require an update to that parking lot just to bring it up to a current standard, whereby it is a kind of paved, smooth, and striped bituminous paving area, along with some other improvements to that. We did note that retail sales requires one space per 250 square feet of retail sales area. We interpolate that for the purpose of a transient merchant permit, just to ensure that adequate parking is provided. Given the building is vacant at this time, there is ample room, and the applicants noted on their plan approximately 22 spaces that are available, although those spaces are not currently striped. And then the applicant did not provide any information relating to signage. Any temporary signage would have to be applied for by the applicant separately and through the city's temporary sign permitting process. And so with that, the applicant did provide some information on the proposed use, as well as just a sketch diagram of how they would display the shade area, the display tables, and then the greenhouse area to the east side of the existing building. And then they would utilize the parking spaces to the east side of that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on the request or the report that was put together.
Mark, I do have one question. I know you noted the parking lot. Did the building owners say if they are planning to pave it?
So the building owner, and Mayor, thank you for that. It's actually a great question. The building owner has been working with the city. I've worked with him for a number of months, and he is in the process of preparing a site plan submittal to the city for the purpose of updating that site so that he can then utilize the building space for a mix of uses that isn't just office use. So he's in that process. I don't have a formal application. I think even Clarissa's talked to the owners as well. I fully anticipate a submittal shortly for that. I do not anticipate, though, that the parking lot or its improvements would be completed in a time that would accommodate this particular request. I think that would happen later in the summer.
Any other questions for staff? Councilmember Faith.
Hi, Mark. Can you tell me why the Christmas tree sales in the fall don't fall under the same mixed use transient permit application?
I mean, typically, well, so it depends on the type of sales and who's selling. Okay, but they do require a transient merchant or transient sales permit. Now, sometimes the sales are done in association with an existing bricks and mortar business, which is not then a transient merchant permit. So say, for example, if the farm supply store was selling, they would be able to do that differently than the transient merchant permit application. But they should, all seasonal sales or seasonal sales from a merchant who is not a bricks and mortar business should be coming in front of the city for transient merchant license.
Well, I look at Sunderland as a transient merchant. For a 60-day period, I can't see where this is any different than what happens with the Christmas tree sales. I'm all about free trade.
We approved it last year. Last discussions we had was about the parking lot, and my concern is okay, so then we allow are they going to get the parking lot done this year if we approve this merchant license? I guess I'll have plenty of time in the fall. But do we want the parking lot to be done first? Is it a safety hazard? We did it last year. Are we concerned about safety in that spot?
If I could offer, council member, the only thing I would say to that is, we've identified that the parking lot does not meet the current standard that the city has for a public parking lot, and primarily because they went in and they put a bunch of asphalt millings on that parking area, which then made it even more uneven and not a solid surface, if you will. So is it an imminent health threat? I don't know that. I mean, it's been there for a long time in a kind of dilapidated state, but in order for the building to be reused, it absolutely has to be brought up to our current standard. And that's really where we kind of drew the line with the property owner, and they're fully aware of that. And I really believe they'll be in with an application shortly for site plan review. Now, getting site plan review doesn't necessarily mean it equates to the parking lot being done, but it's the next step that needs to be taken in order for them to get that parking lot updated. I don't know if that answered your question. I was offering some.
Well, I think I
context
kind
on
of
it.
threw 3 questions out in my rambling, but yeah, I don't have a problem with it at all. Like I said, we did it last year. If we don't see any safety issues, my only other question I think for you, Mark, was did we have any issues with sign permitting last year? Was there a sign permit? Because there were signs out there.
I think so. I know the applicant's here tonight. I think she would, I think there was a temporary sign permit asked for and provided on this property. I don't know. I'm not aware of any issues we had with the signage that was on site for the temporary time period.
Okay. Yeah, I'm for it.
My memory was that I think the sign permit request may have come in after the fact. I think it was brought to their attention because they were putting temporary signs up, and that someone might have a better memory of this, but I think we put a stop to the number of signs and they fell in line. So if it is in fact a 60-day grant of a transient merchant permit, I would, like you mentioned, include into there, one of the conditions is that prior to that they put a temporary sign package together.
I would agree with that, because last year there were some issues with signs just appearing along the right of way. Councilmember DeLuca.
Well, and the last thing I want to do is come across as being not supportive of somebody trying to put a very nice business like Kathy, you talked about in our opening comments. My concern from a elected official's perspective is this is now the 3rd time we have seen a transient merchant request. And I start questioning, is this really transitory at that point? Versus is this a seasonal business? And I'm also struck by the fact that the owner was supposed to comply with our requirements on the lot and has not done that. And I don't think preparing a plan is the same as bringing that lot into compliance. So unfortunately, I am not going to be supportive of this because I don't think it meets the transitory requirements. And the lot has not been brought into place. We talked about it last year in the spring. We talked about it last fall. And now here we are talking about it again.
Councilmember Cahill.
I think conceptually, to me, this fits the meaning of the transient merchant. You know, we would never expect a grower to buy a building for 2 months out of the year. So I do support this, the permit itself, but I also have concerns about the parking lot, largely because we hold other permanent merchants in our town to such a higher standard for their parking lots, in terms of striping and how many vehicles we can have and all of that. But because we've also given those merchants several chances, I'm willing to give this parking lot one more chance, but I will state on the record now that going forward, we have to get it fixed if we're going to continue to do this. So, but in equality with other businesses, I'll give them another chance, but also in equality with other permanent merchants, we have to hold them to the same standard.
Would that be a condition?
It would be a condition.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the transient merchant permit contingent upon a temporary sign package, and that going forward, the parking lot will be brought into compliance. Anyone willing to second that motion?
I will.
Councilmember Fay has second. Any further discussion or questions? Administrator Hadler?
Are you asking that the parking lot be brought into compliance prior to the transient merchant, or are you stating on the record that this council to approve one moving forward?
Yes. Forward. Yeah,
Okay.
not realistic to be done by May 1.
Okay, just for the record.
Before additional permits would be granted.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? We have a motion and a second by a show of hands, all in favor. I see 4, opposed, same sign. I see 1. The motion carries 4-1.
Can I say thank you?
You're welcome. All right. The next item of business this evening is the massage therapy license application. And I will turn that back over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have Josie Lefebvre has applied for a massage therapy license. She will be working at Haven Homes in their salon, which is not quite completed yet. So they're still working on their licensure for that salon through the state. In speaking with Mark and Scott about the licensing for that, we feel that she can be licensed under the salon, as Haven Homes as an exclusion. And it is City Code 114.05E, places duly licensed or operating a hospital, nursing home, hospice, sanitarium, or group home established for the hospitalization or care of human beings. And so, sorry, back up. Normally, an individual massage therapist license, those would have to be under an establishment license, or excuse me, an enterprise license in the city. So because she's working within the nursing home is kind of overseen by all of these other state agencies, we feel comfortable in recommending that she be able to work under that exclusion. West Hennepin Public Safety did complete a background check and verified her education, which is at Innovata Institute, which is, we were happy that that school was still in existence, which is often not the case when we're doing massage therapy backgrounds. And that's about it. That's the summary. Any questions?
Do you know, is this going to be open to the public as well, or just to the residents of Haven Homes? Because I know they have other things like adult daycare and rehab that is open to the public.
I am not aware. I can certainly clarify that with their administrator. I know that she's not planning on being there a lot. I think the initial plan is really only, 1 day a month. So yeah, I'm not certain.
Any other questions for staff? Councilmember Fay?
Let me just clarify, we are not, we are or are not in the process of approving a massage therapy license for her?
Correct.
But at the same time, we're not approving a enterprise license for massage therapy for Haven Homes either.
We are not asking them to get a license because they fall under the exclusion listed in 114.05E.
Not to sound, why is it on the agenda then?
No, we're approving her license.
So we are approving her license.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, she's not the exclusion. She's being licensed under the Haven Homes. Haven Homes is under the exclusion.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, if there's no discussion, I will make the motion to approve her massage therapy application license.
All right, there's a motion on the table to approve the massage therapy license application for Josie LaFave.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilmember DeLuca. Is there any further discussion or questions regarding the license? Seeing and hearing none then, all in favor of approving the license by a show of hands, please. All right, I see 5 hands opposed, same sign. Okay, the license passes 5-0. The next item of business this evening on our agenda is the tobacco license application for a Maple Plain smoke shop. I'm going to turn that over to staff.
So again, just kind of a quick summary. We have, it's actually Albertville Tobacco and Vapor Incorporated doing business as Maple Plain Smoke Shop. Is applying for a tobacco license. They will be in a facility in the space directly east of the liquor store, the liquor depot. And again, West Hennepin did perform the background check and that came back clear. Gary also took the additional step of contacting Albertville to check on that facility and see if they had any concerns with either, non-compliance or illegal activities or whatever. And that check also came back clear.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification on Director Crail's note, he said, please be advised that we have done a record check on the above establishment for an issuance of a tobacco license. We have not found anything on our record check that would preclude them from being issued a liquor license for the year 2021. I'm assuming that was a typo.
That's
and we're not planning on them opening up having a liquor license.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And this is the license to occupy, to sell tobacco and tobacco related products. I'm assuming then, Mark, there'll be a whole new sign application, et cetera, that'll fall under a different thing. This is just the first step.
Correct. I'm not sure Mark is still here, but yes, that is accurate.
Clarissa,
Yeah, that's right.
Clarissa or Mark, could you speak to the fact, I did have a couple residents reach out to me expressing concern and that they did not want this in Maple Plain. Could you two speak to that as staff, please?
I guess
What?
Mark, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to answer the question. The use itself as a tobacco shop is a permitted use in our mixed use gateway zoning district. So that's what allows them to operate. Under the tobacco shop provision, they would definitely meet that criteria. We did talk about as a staff, it is something the council can talk about and or think about for future. You are capable and allowed as a city to designate and determine land uses, and this would be a land use that you could you could prohibit in the mixed use district or in other districts in the city. So.
But at this time, it is an acceptable use. And if they
It
meet
is
all
a
the
permitted use.
a permitted use.
Correct.
Then I would have no real reason to vote against it, is what I was trying to explain to them, that it is permitted and it is.
And you also have the additional tobacco code, and they fall under that. So there isn't anything from their application that would preclude them from opening that shop in that location under your current code.
The only thing that could preclude anyone from voting for this would be maybe their conscience. I mean, it's a permitted use.
Any other questions or discussion? With that, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the tobacco license application for the Maple Plain Smoke Shop.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion made by DeLong, second by Councilmember Fay. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of approving the tobacco license by a show of hands? See 5 hands, opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries 5-0. Thank you for your work on that, staff. Next item of business is recommended city code revision for our city council meetings, and I will turn that over to Clarissa.
Thank you, Mayor. We had addressed this briefly in the work session a couple weeks ago. This was brought to our attention by City Attorney Scott Landsman. We had been kind of discussing the options for having your strategy or strategic planning session outside of the city limits, and so he kind of reviewed that city code regarding city council meetings and realized that it wasn't in line with state statutes. And so he has rewritten it and proposed the attached changes. And then there's a second motion to approve the summary publication, which is required by statute. The approval is required by statute, not the summary publication.
Are there any questions for staff? Okay, then we are looking for a motion to approve ordinance 310, an ordinance amending Maple Plain City Code, Chapter 30 regarding meetings of the city council.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember DeLuca, second by Councilmember Cahill. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, then by show of hands. All in favor, or wait, it's an ordinance. We have to do roll call. Sorry.
Do we need to separate them at all because it's roll call, or can we do them both procedurally?
It'll be fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Fay,
Aye.
Cahill,
Aye.
Moskowski,
Aye.
DeLuca,
Aye.
DeLong.
Aye.
The next item of business is looking for a motion to approve the summary publication of the ordinance number 310.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cahill,
Second.
second by Councilmember DeLong. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote, looking for approval of the summary publication of ordinance 310.
Fay,
Aye.
Cahill,
Aye.
Moskowski,
Aye.
DeLuca,
Aye.
DeLong,
Aye.
The ayes have it, 5-0. Next item of business this evening is the turf management quotes. I'm going to turn that back over to staff.
and thank you again, Mayor. I was able to get 4 quotes, mostly local businesses, so Scott's, Larson. Professional Turf and Renovation was recommended by a couple people. And so I talked with him, and then also Prolons, which was the quote that Frank had gotten before. And Prolons has actually been doing your maintenance here for quite a number of years. Again, you know, a little bit tricky to get apples to apples quotes, so we went with per application. Scott's quote, you'll see in there exactly how many square feet they bid. I kind of generally asked people to quote the location, not necessarily any particular square footage. So far, Larson is the lowest at $11.20 per application. Professional Turf and Renovation would be the second lowest at $19.84, and then Prolons and Scott's. I'm a little bit concerned with Larson's quote because I wasn't able to get a really firm answer on what that quotation was based on. And they added this language about revisiting the estimate and changing it. So I'm a little hesitant there. I don't know if you guys have been happy with your service in the past, if you just kind of stick with Prolons because they kind of know the location. Scott's is obviously a local business. Professional Turf and Renovation is currently does work at a number of different Orono schools locations. So he was recommended by the facility manager. What is his name? Ross, maybe? Ross, thank you, Mayor. And then also, I think I've mentioned my husband's been in the industry, and so the city of Rosemount uses him quite a bit. And Kurt says he's too cheap. But he does have a turf degree, and I feel like he will work with us maybe a little more as far as, getting the right application for the right budget. So I'm confident in that. But obviously he's not a local business. And so if you guys feel strongly about that, then you can go that route. Any thoughts?
What do you know about professional turf, other than just recommendations?
I know they are a second generation company. So it's Andy and maybe John is his dad. They do a number of, or a lot of, anecdotally is what Kurt said, just a lot of cities and schools. So I think from a turf, like field turf perspective, they're considered very or highly regarded in the industry. I know, just that, again, anecdotally, the hubby in the industry says he's underpriced. I know that I had, he was very good to work with as far as the, getting the quote and being flexible and kind of change, kind of tweaking it to fit my quoting needs. And then also he does work with, there's a gentleman, and I'm not going to be able to come up with his company name, but this Mike in Delano, he works closely with them and kind of shares jobs or they kind of tag team some things as well. And again, just to reiterate, I did talk with Ross and Ross had recommended him.
Do you know if their quote includes the ball field?
It does.
It does. So it's the new Veterans Park plus Timpy Field.
Yeah. All of them should include the ball field.
So Clarissa, I was going back to your summary page. I love your executive summaries because that's where I key in on. But am I reading this correct? That I got lost in Bryantwood, Rainbow, Veterans. I really don't care as long as they're all covered the way we wanted to. I'll assume that's the case. I'm looking for the bottom line number. Is that the one on the right-hand side, the column? So
I don't-
Scott, 10 grand, Larson's is 3. Where's the bottom line number on these 4 bids?
It depends on if you want to stay in budget. So right now, as I described in my summary, your budget for contract services and parks, which included, last year it included ProLawns and Adams Pest Control. Your budgeted number was 3380. Your expenditures were actually 6790 for 2020. So if we were to stay at that 3380 and keep 12 months of pest control, we'd actually only have $2,120 for turf management available in 2021. If we wanted to go to every other month for pest control, that would give us $2,750. And so I'd really have to work with
I'm not trying to let the budget drive this decision. I'm trying to say, we figured out that there was so much that we wanted for turf maintenance. You went to 4 vendors, and I'm looking for the bottom line number of those 4 to do whatever it was we said we were going to do at the time. Is that what those columns are? on the right?
If you want to include the entirety of all of these 3 locations,
Right.
that far right column is the bottom line, that your number. However, if we don't need the entirety of all these 3 locations to be covered and you want to stay in budget, then we could work with the vendors to determine, the locations. So we're talking about, high visibility or high traffic areas that you want to cover. I know there's a lot. There's a huge section of Rainbow Park that is kind of wooded. There really isn't much grass there, honestly. So, I'm not sure, it's not worth putting down a chemical where there's no grass. So I think that, and again, kind of coming back to that, being able to kind of read the location and have the expertise to lay down what's needed and stay within budget, I think is something that we should contemplate.
But then these numbers would be no greater than that number to whatever degree you would negotiate with them to do certain portions would only drive the cost less.
Correct.
And when we have significant differences here in the bottom line, I mean, to the tune of 3 times as much, I don't know why we wouldn't go with Larson.
Well, I hear what you're saying, Councilmember DeLuca. When I look at Larson's, my concern is that they can come back and revisit the estimate, so that one could go up. And I also, to me, their proposal didn't feel complete. I mean, it was just an answer going in a bunch of different colors. Where when I look at the other ones, it felt more professional and thought out. So to me, ProTurf feels more responsible, and with the experience, with the schools and other cities. So I feel that ProTurf would be more responsible. Councilmember Fay?
And I was actually quite heartbroken because I was really pulling for Scott's or Larson, and what we got was both ends of the spectrum. One was so low that it couldn't be accurate, and one was so high we can never accept it, and which leaves us with ProLawns and Professional Turf. And Mike, the answer to your question, she did a great job of breaking it down into some people quoted 4 applications, some people
No, I
quoted
get it.
3. Everyone quoted 5 different parks, but I don't know if we need much more than weed control in the downtown area. We don't need 3 applications of fertilization and weed control downtown. I don't even know if we need anything over at Heritage Park, which is the fire station. So she did a great job of really concentrating on 3. And I'm very concerned about the $1,120 per application for Larson. I am just as concerned as I am about the $33.50 for Scott's, which, so in my word, if we're going to negotiate between the 4, I throw the low out, I throw the high out, and we negotiate between the 2 in the middle. My thought.
John, you're muted.
I feel the same way as John. You usually throw out the high and the low when they're that far off. I mean, I'm in favor of either Pro Turf or Pro Lawns. And that being said, I need to dodge out of this meeting if that's okay with you guys. I have a hard stop.
I'm right along with you guys. If we're going to insist on monocultural turfs and spraying poison, we might as well save some money. So I would support the professional turf and renovation. I think I was concerned as well by Larson's line that they could come back and adjust it. So it might not necessarily be that cheap. So I would go with the professional turf. I feel comfortable with the references.
Is there anyone who would like to make an official motion?
I'll make the motion to have Clarissa work with professional turf and renovation with the understanding to let her use her judgment on the pieces that necessarily don't have to be done within those parks. And I'll make that a motion.
There's a motion by Councilmember DeLuca, looking for a second.
I will second that because I'll second it.
Are there any questions or further discussion? Clarissa?
Would you like to set a budget for that, or would you like me to just attempt to stay in budget but get the best value we can?
Not to exceed the quote. If anything, it would be less.
Your last sentence in your narrative was staff will work with the chosen contract to assess turf conditions in each park and prioritize applications to maximize value and fit the budget set by the council. So do we have a new budget? Do we have a dollar amount, Mike, that you want to work within?
My motion included the fact that Clarissa has to use some judgment to get what needs to be done. If that's a few dollars over the set budget that we guessed 6 months ago, so be it. Got to do what we got to do.
That's what I envisioned.
Any further discussion then or questions? All in favor by a show of hands? There's 4 hands, opposed, same sign. The motion carries 4-0. Next item of business this evening is council reports and other business. We will start with Councilmember Fay, followed by Councilmember Cahill, followed by Councilmember DeLuca.
A light month, pair of workshops with all of you, an EDA meeting with all of you. The mayor and I attended both the fire commission as well as several Rotary, Orono Rotary events, as well as Party in the Park planning.
I attended a watershed meeting, and actually I should say I had to chair the meeting on my second meeting ever. I'm sure, John, you enjoy that. And I set a record at about an hour long. So other than that, like John, it's been a pretty light month, and other than our meetings we have together, I haven't done any other meetings. So thank you.
And without repeating the ones that have already been done, we also had a finance committee meeting during the month that I think was referenced earlier in the budgetary cycle. Also, early in the month, we had a Highway 12 coalition meeting. And for those that are listening or viewing this, there will be some changes in Highway 90, 92, and a bypass through the city, around the city, starting this year, and will go this season and into next season. But the needed repairs to Highway 12 that are going to help the safety of that area are on the way. They're starting. I think Julie will probably give us a little bit on the businesses in her report, but this is going to be a tough time for our businesses as we reroute things, but know that the safety issues around Highway 12 are being addressed. And I thank Gary for his leadership in that area as things have moved along very nicely on getting some very needed safety changes to Highway 12.
Thank you. I this month, again, won't name what's already been said. I attended the Hennepin County Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee meeting. Along with Fire Chief McCoy and Administrator Hadler have been attending the potential fire district meetings just to explore and to look at options and talk about how to best serve our residents and future needs. I was able to attend the Northwest Hennepin League of Municipalities, and our speaker this month was Hennepin County Commissioner Kevin Anderson. So it was nice to hear some of his vision and goals and to start to form that new relationship with our commissioner. I was able to attend the regional council or mayor's meeting. It was a tough meeting. It was about mental health, which is a continued growing concern that our law enforcement has expressed, our fire service has expressed, and Commissioner Malcolm was there, and Sue from the National Alliance of Mental Health was there. Just the growing need and how we need to work together to help better to address mental health. And unfortunately with COVID, we're only going to see the mental health issues continue to grow was a big concern that was expressed. I was also had the privilege of sitting in on the West Hennepin Public Safety Department police officer interviews. So we interviewed 6 officers and made a recommendation to the chief, and he did chief's interviews. So they are going forward with that process. So that is exciting to may be welcoming a new officer. And along with welcoming someone new, which is always exciting, you always have the time of saying goodbye. And just want to thank Officer Aaron Geddes for his service and commitment to our community. Wish him well and the best on his future endeavors. Officer Geddes is now a pilot and is teaching flight classes, and just wish him safety and all the best and thank him for his service. And as Councilmember DeLuca did allude to, I was able to attend the chamber meetings. And a big part of the chamber right now is there's a small group working on a task force, which is primarily focused on the upcoming construction projects and how we can best get people to come to Maple Plain. People aren't naturally going to be driving through basically from May until the fall, because both the west and the east ends of Highway 12 will be closed. So the chamber is very grateful to the EDA, which was approved tonight through the council, the grant that the $5,000 that you have put towards the task force to help promote and advertise for our businesses. So we just want to encourage everyone to be watching social media, the mail. We're trying to hit all areas of communication. There will be some incentives to come in and to eat at the restaurants and to encourage people to come back, not just one time during construction, but repeat visits. So as you're talking with people, everything is still open in Maple Plain. You just have to take a few turns to get there. So it won't be as convenient, but it will be very, very safe and very well promoted. So keep your eyes and ears open. I think that was it for me. Did anyone else have any other business or reports or anything I forgot? All right, well, it has been a long but productive evening. Thank you all for your endurance and for those who are still with us. And with that, I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Moved by Councilmember DeLuca,
I'll second in DeLong's absence.
second by Councilmember Hale. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All right, good night, everyone. The meeting's adjourned at 9:12.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Mark, for staying.
Yeah, for sure.
You're a trooper.
Why am I viewing John Fay's screen?